And good evening, everybody. This is First Alert Chief Meteorologist Casanova Nurse, and we are here busy in the First Alert Weather Center here at ABC 27, here in the Tallahassee and South Georgia area, in case there are other folks who may join in or watch this after it's been streamed live, and just curious about where we are in relation to active storms in other parts of the southeast. So a little identifier there. We are here because we are still tracking the activity that has been raging in many sections of the Deep South. And that some of that activity is still poised to make an entrance into our region here in the Florida Big Bend, southwestern Georgia, and south central Georgia region. It's been very quiet, relatively speaking, for us, of course, as you may know. And it's still that way at this time. Taping this or streaming this around 9:45, and we still have a general void of any major action in our region. So as you go to sleep, don't necessarily believe that this is the way things are going to be all night long and through tomorrow morning, because the expectation is for a line of thunderstorms to make its push into the area, and it's likely going to trigger some active weather of our own later in the early morning hours of Monday. This is what's happening to the west of us, not too distant, but still far enough away to where we're not getting immediate direct effects. But there's plenty of active thunderstorms, and we can see some evidence of that developing line, which stretches from the Lake Pontchartrain area right through most of Alabama and into the Tennessee Valley, into northeastern, northwestern Georgia. So that is a solid line of very intense thunderstorms. You see some flashing shapes there, the yellow shapes indicating severe thunderstorm warnings, and near and north of Birmingham, a couple tornado warnings. The activity that's farther north is not going to come our way. It's going to be what's happening here in the southern extent of the line. That's in the central Gulf Coast and maybe a few spots that form ahead of it. That's what we're going to have to monitor very closely in the early morning hours for development and growth of those thunderstorms that can bring us some hassles after midnight and before and around sunrise. Now, we do have a series of tornado watches, none of which include any of our local counties, but don't be shocked if maybe in the next couple of hours we may start to see issuances of tornado watches closer or within our own area. But we do have a steady string of watches that cover much of central and southwestern Alabama and into northwestern Georgia as well. So some of those may begin to impact us as those conditions start to get closer to the region. Don't be shocked if you hear an alert on your phone from our Storm Shield app that a tornado watch is issued for our area. Not at this current time, but overnight I would suspect we could certainly have one. Temperatures are warm today. We had highs in the lower 80s in the Big Bend, near 90 in the Suwannee Valley. So we have one element that supports severe thunderstorms, that being warm air. We also have a strong, steady south wind pattern. Wind speeds have been steady around 10, 15, 20 miles per hour, and they've been gusting even higher. So we do have the element of steady air movement, good solid flow from the south. That also aids in storm development. And we have a very vigorous low pressure system that's swinging through the southeast and the Tennessee Valley. So all that will mix together to start to form a band of thunderstorms that will eventually reach our area. The forecast and focus data seems like the line of thunderstorms is still expected to reach some of our westernmost areas after midnight, perhaps around 2 to 3 a.m. Some of the latest runs of the forecast data have been delaying the beginning push of that line into some of our western areas, perhaps around 3 to 6 a.m. So again, this will be solidly in the overnight period. Nothing of this nature expected to come before midnight, but perhaps by the time we approach the hours just before sunrise, and then right around sunrise itself, that's when this line of storms may not be quite as organized as some of the systems that are in interior Alabama are right now, but we'll still have a very potent line of storms that will sweep on through, working with a strong south wind pattern to produce more gusty winds, which will push from west to east across our area and begin to fizzle out by about late morning or around the midday hour perhaps, as it begins to exit our region in the I-75 corridor. So we will start to have weather conditions improving pretty rapidly as we progress beyond noon tomorrow. But until then, we'll still have that steady stream of south winds, which will kick up even more in speed as that thunderstorm line starts to push closer to the region. So sustained winds could be about 15 to 25 miles per hour. And then it's the storm gust winds that we really have to be concerned about, because that's when winds can kick up to about 50, 60, maybe even 70 miles per hour. Now the winds just going up about 5,000 feet, they're also very strong. Maybe you looked up earlier today, you saw clouds, they were moving from south to north, and they were just zipping right along. That's an indication of very strong winds just a few thousand feet up. When you get to about the 5,000 foot level, those winds are around 70 to 80 miles per hour, and even perhaps higher at times. So that will also help to cause more of that violent air movement near the thunderstorms, maybe even supporting a little bit of a twisting motion, a little rotational motion. And sometimes with a very strong line of thunderstorms, you can get enough smaller scale wind force to cause that circulation that can lead to a tornado. So that's why that is a concern in the overnight period as well. Usually at night, the atmosphere is a bit more stable, not quite as able to cause a rising air motion, but even in the late night hours, there's still an appreciable amount of energy that the atmosphere will contain. Those shades of yellow indicating some moderately sufficient amounts of energy in the atmosphere for where thunderstorms can sustain themselves and even build a little bit more. So that's something that will certainly cause more support for active weather overnight. The thunderstorms, of course, by their very nature, they will produce occasions of lightning. You'll hear some claps of thunder, and the lightning can become frequent just before and a little bit after sunrise across the area. So be aware of that hazard as well. And of course, the mix of maybe lightning strikes on power lines or transformers rather, as well as the gusty winds. Power outages are a possibility with these storms. Now, the storm strength tends to focus in on where we could have individual intense parts of the line that pass through. And this does tend to show at least a few occasions where we can have these individual spots growing in strength and passing through various portions of the region. I don't necessarily want you to focus on specific geography here, but it does just tend to show that there could be a few points within that broader line where thunderstorms can be more active when it comes to producing wind, when it comes to perhaps forming a tornado. If you remember from a couple weeks ago, we had that line come through, produced a couple tornadoes in Madison County. Something similar may occur with this line. No two severe weather events are the same, of course, but we could have some similarities where we have that big band of rain and storms, and just a couple spots within that band can cause a quick forming tornado, which can be more hazardous at night when many folks are sleeping. So because of the latest information that's been considered, we still have a fairly decent risk when it comes to how many of these storms can be severe. This orange shade, which covers many South Georgia counties, central and western Big Bend counties, including Leon, Wakulla, and Gadsden, that's in the scale of numerous occurrences of severe thunderstorms. Many storms that can cause gusty winds that create some damage, some thunderstorms that can be tornado producing. This red shade here in the Chattahoochee River area, that's where there's a likelihood for widespread severe weather occurrences. Many storms that can produce a broader scale of wind gusts or several more tornadoes within that region. The threat level gets progressively lower as you move into the middle and lower Suwannee Valley through tonight and early tomorrow morning. However, as that line keeps pushing off towards the east through the morning and after midday hours or so, we can maybe have a better scattering of hit or miss severe weather across the Suwannee Valley. So even though the risk level for areas like Live Oak and Mayo is much lower, there's still a risk nonetheless, and it may come beyond sunrise. So as folks are waking up, getting their Monday going, there still may be some active storms in those areas. So the main threat that you should be aware of is the wind gust threat. There could be that line that produces multiple severe thunderstorm warnings and several areas of strong winds overnight. So I'm going to put that at the high level in our hazard scale. For tornadoes, I'm putting it at a medium. I think it does not necessarily warrant a major amount of tornadoes forming, but there still could be one or two, even in the morning. That's certainly hazardous, so we're putting that at the medium category. There will be times of heavy rain, so the flooding risk, however, is going to be low. The ground has been very dry lately, so not much of a huge flooding risk. Hail, not overly concerned about that. Maybe a couple of occurrences of that, but not a major concern, not a primary concern. So overnight through the early morning hours of your Monday, right through sunrise and shortly beyond, that's when we'll start to see the height of our severe weather risk. Watch for those strong damaging winds. that can certainly topple some trees, knock over branches. If they fall just the right or wrong way, it can cause structural damage or maybe snap power lines, so that's a threat as well. A couple tornadoes can certainly occur with this as the action moves from west to east. So it will reach tri-state areas first and then sweep to the east and likely weaken a bit after about 9-10 a.m. in our easternmost areas, but there's still going to be an ongoing risk for at least some active weather in those areas. So there is a decent chance that we'll have some active weather, severe thunderstorms as well overnight, and that's why I'm going to stay here through the night. I have fellow meteorologist Dave Vogan here. He carried you through the thunderstorms that occurred, I think, on Wednesday night. So he'll be in the studio helping things out as well, pushing some social media information and other digital information. Reed Leibarger will be coming in during the early part of your morning, and as he usually does on the morning shift, he will certainly guide you through. So we're going to be a full house here in the Weather Center, and we certainly appreciate those of you who have signed on to watch this coverage. I see a post from my own Facebook page at Chief Meteorologist Casanova Nurse. Christina is asking about the threat level for Tallahassee proper, and if that is still accurate, whether we would see maybe more thunderstorms or maybe fewer thunderstorms. I still believe that we are going to have at least that line of thunderstorms sweeping through, and even within the city of Tallahassee, there's still enough reason to make sure that you are on guard and aware of what's going on. So the latest data may be pushing the line closer to the capital city a little bit later than earlier projections, but still, I'd say we're around 6 to 8 a.m., and even that window of time may have some wiggle room with it, but certainly right around sunrise or a little bit before within Tallahassee, there is that possibility for some of these more active storms to come through. So again, I think the broader scale threat will be the gustier winds, but it's really going to be, hour to hour, minute to minute to see exactly what kind of strong thunderstorm elements can be contained within the line, and whether there could be a tornadic threat at any specific location at any specific time. That's more of a smaller scale forecasting approach. I can't tell you that at 7 a.m. there will be a tornado at X location, a little bit too precise, still far ahead in time. But nonetheless, still be aware a few hours before sunrise and maybe around or slightly after sunrise for the capital city. There could be some active storms around. And if the line tends to develop faster, move in faster, we could push up the time to where it arrives a little bit earlier. Some folks are looking for the rain. It's been very dry, increasing drought situation, so the rain is certainly welcome, and hopefully we can get some decent totals without so much of the severe weather hassle. But the possibility, unfortunately, it is a mix that comes together at this time. I see Hamp is expressing a little opinion about the rain. No heavy rain, no heavy rain. I'm not saying this is going to be a flooding rain situation or that you'll get a big drenching. Thunderstorm lines do tend to have quick doses of heavy rain, and then they move on. I will say, in regarding to the rain forecast, is that beyond this severe weather event, we may have this front linger just to the south. It may waver back and forth. So this is not going to be a one and done thing necessarily with rain. We do have future rain chances in the picture. And to account for rain totals, I wouldn't necessarily place bets on having huge amounts of rain coming our way. But I think our rain chances in general for this week are a little better compared to past rain events that we've had where we haven't had much in the way of accumulation. Calvin, a loyal weather watcher for many years, he's asking what could Taylor County get? We'll go on this timeline here. Likely in Taylor County, it seems like it'll be sunrise or after. The most active thunderstorms may be closer to the state line. However, there is still a possibility, especially in the last half of the morning, 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock, you'll probably get some portion of this line coming through. Taylor County, of course, is right there. You see that line kind of thinning out, not quite as intense as it was earlier or as it is in the forecast projections to the north. So take that as you will. But that does tend to go along with the overall risk level, which does have a lower risk for the Suwannee River Valley compared to, say, the Chattahoochee River and then just a general scattering of severe weather possibilities for the southeastern Big Bend into the late morning hours. So that is something that you should consider. I wouldn't necessarily say Perry is in the bullseye or Taylor County is in the bullseye for the worst weather. You may get clipped by a few active thunderstorms, and it's definitely something to keep in mind, especially around the sunrise time frame, it appears, for the southeastern Big Bend. I definitely agree with many of you and your sentiment about those very strong active severe thunderstorms and violent tornadoes that have been occurring in eastern Mississippi, western Alabama. I definitely hope they don't come here. I don't think they will, not to that same extent. A little different mix of conditions there, supporting those violent big tornadoes. I don't see that same mix happening here. But if we do have a tornado risk, it's likely going to come from that main line and not necessarily from individual thunderstorms that tend to sprout up in the overnight period. A couple more questions before I drop the stream here. Crystal is asking about Gadsden County. As we go back a step into the risk category, Gadsden County is within the numerous severe thunderstorm risk category, like many of our counties are, simply meaning that you can have numerous occurrences of strong gusty winds with that line as it pushes in from the west. The timing for western areas will be a little bit faster compared to other sections, as mentioned earlier. So we'll just review this line one more time. Going through time, mostly after midnight, and based on our forecast and focus data, it seems like mostly after 3 a.m., probably the earliest that it gets into our western areas. But as that line approaches, estimating 5, 6, 7 o'clock or so, there can be a few intense spots. If you see those spots of pink and purple and magenta, that indicates, at least based off of this forecast projection, where some of those stronger elements can be. And again, I don't want you to necessarily say at 6 a.m. there will be a tornado in southern Decatur County. That's not necessarily what's being relayed here, but it's just the fact that there will be some points within that line that can be pretty intense with the wind gust threat, and perhaps maybe even the possibility for tornadoes to form within that line. So again, Gadsden County, western Gadsden County, I think was Crystal's specific point. Be aware, especially after 3, 4 a.m., that's when some thunderstorms will certainly start to roll into the area. Thank you all so much, and I'm glad I was able to actually look back and get some of the questions as they were being poised or put in there on the comment line, so we can have a little back and forth interaction there. As I mentioned at the top, I'm going to stay here for a while. I'm back from vacation, and what a way to come back from vacation, right? But nonetheless, this is what we do here at the First Alert Weather Team. Make sure that you are properly connected to the information that you need through various means, and we'll certainly keep doing that job through the course of the night with maybe another Facebook Live. If a tornado watch is issued, we'll certainly start to go on our broadcast channel with information at least hourly, if not every half hour, just to keep folks who may be watching at that time and curious about what's going on. We'll keep you up to date during the overnight period. So we're not going to let you down. We're going to keep you connected, but make sure you stay connected and make sure you have ways to get information. I know cell phones and apps are great, but make sure that your cell phone is charged. Make sure that if you put your cell phone on silent, that maybe you keep, maybe you flip it on so you can hear the alert sound, whatever your phone alerts, whatever your phone's alert sound is. Make sure you can hear it, especially if it's connected to a weather app like our Storm Shield app. You can program it to get in weather information for your specific location. If you live in Miller County, Georgia, you can get the alerts for Miller County only, and you won't be alerted for something that happens in Suwannee County necessarily if you have the programming settings correct on there. So have that on standby. Maybe set your clock alarm for a certain time, and check in on your Facebook feed, or check in on ABC 27, or check out our website for any new alerts. So try to rest easy, but also have ways to be alerted if things start to go a little haywire overnight. We'll be here and we'll keep you informed, especially as things start to develop. But at least between now and midnight, perhaps 1 a.m., not much will be happening. I just urge you to stay connected to information. Couple more since I see some new things. Pavo, Georgia. I see Shannon is asking about Pavo. Pavo is certainly within the higher risk region. right there. So there's Pavo right about there. So you certainly are in the numerous severe weather category where you can certainly have the line of thunderstorms blasting through and giving you some strong wind gusts and also a slightly higher tornado threat. Pavo, you're kind of in the same boat as most other locations. Christine lives in Ray City. You had a severe weather bout just last week, a few days ago. Should you go elsewhere if you live in a mobile home? It's a good idea, and I think that's a good point. I'm glad I looked at that question because if you do live in mobile homes or manufactured housing and they're not necessarily built to withstand strong storm winds, keep in mind of a place where you can go in the middle of the night if thunderstorms were to come through, if severe weather was to come through. If you have a nearby shelter, and I know with this era of social distancing, there may not be as many options compared to normal times, but consider what your options will be if you do need to evacuate or find a safer place if a warning is issued, especially if it's a tornado warning. So I hope you do have some options, maybe in a previously made severe weather plan, or if you have a neighbor in sturdier housing that you can maybe call right now and see if it's possible you can go to your neighbor's house in a well-structured home. That's an option to consider. But just make sure you have an option if it were to come down to that. Hopefully it doesn't, but you don't want to get caught off guard and making last-second decisions when seconds is maybe all you have in advance of a nasty storm situation. Kimberly is asking, what's the name of the app for this phone? Go to your app store, type in Storm Shield, and then you'll find listings for Storm Shield weather app. You can download that. It's a free download, and to access most of its features, you don't have to subscribe to anything. There are some things on there like lightning data or something more specific that does have a subscription fee. But to get alerts and warnings and messages about a tornado watch or whatever the case is, it does not cost you a thing. It's a free download. You can look at the radar feature. You can get your forecast, your hourly, daily forecast, and it's all free to access. So don't be thrown off if you start seeing pop-up windows about subscribe to this and that. You can just bypass that if you want and access the vital, critical information for free. So that's something that you can download, and I think our digital team just posted the link where you can click on it on your device or tap on it, I guess, and you can get that information right there on your device. Had a couple others about Taylor County. Mentioned Taylor County earlier. Ocklawahnee, Georgia is about the same as Thomasville and Thomas County. Those thunderstorms will work in, and I think I'll show the forecast and focus feature one more time before we close out for this session. Here's how it looks through midnight. Not much of anything happening. We'll monitor any storms in the Panhandle and the Emerald Coast area. Some indications that we could start to see some local storms by around 3, 4 a.m., beginning to move into tri-state areas around 4 to 6, about 6 to 8 in the central zones and into more South Georgia counties, and then the southeastern Big Bend around 8 to 10 and beyond. So that's the timeline that we're looking at right now. Some forecast data comes in on an hourly basis now, so we can look at more detailed weather data to make a little more of a precise measurement of when the storm line can come through. So that's what we're looking at right now. Again, I really appreciate all the interaction in this session. I'll probably come back after our 11 o'clock show or sometime in the early part of the morning to give folks an update on what's going on. But just, again, I urge folks to stay aware. This is not necessarily going to be the worst thing that we have. I don't see this being a repeat of 2017. If you were here in January 2017 for that severe weather event, I don't think this one comes up to that level. But nonetheless, don't take it lightly because you can be awakened by some rough weather if you're not expecting it. And hopefully by watching this, you have an idea of what is possible and what you can expect, and hopefully that can help you in making decisions for you and your family's safety. Well, again, we'll be here all night, and we'll give you more updates as the night goes on. Thanks for joining me here on our Facebook Live page at WTXL Tallahassee. I'm Chief Meteorologist Casanova Nurse, and I'll be back later on. Plus, don't forget good old-fashioned television. I'll be there at 11 o'clock with another rundown on the forecast for the night ahead. Thanks again for joining me. I appreciate it. Take care and be well.